So, the real suck part of this one for me is the fact that we should be doing a video talking about all the good things that we saw out of that game Saturday. And there were plenty of really cool, uh, great performances, but it doesn't matter. In the context, it's still a loss. Um, it's still a colossal collapse in the second half. It's like Deontay Foreman rushing for 2,000 yards in a losing season. It's still a losing season, and that's what matters. So, let's talk about it. I know you guys have a lot of comments. Definitely drop them below. There's so many ways I think to look at this thing, and how it went down. Kind of a tale of two halves too. But anyway, give the video a like, share it out. Definitely leave your comments below, and yeah, let me know what's kind of on top of mind for you. But yeah, let's talk about this one. So I thought we would start by looking at team stats. You know, obviously there's so many storylines to what happened, but this thing starts out scoring 14 super quick points. Um, you know, Scoring on the first touchdown, scoring within 14 points within about 2 minutes. Part of me kind of thinks that Texas scored and got up so fast, almost too quick. Maybe that changed the mindset. Maybe that changed the game plan. It certainly caused Lincoln Riley to bench Spencer Rattler and bring in Caleb Williams, which changed things quickly. So I don't know. Sure, I'm not going to say don't give me a score of 28-7. So fast, but I part of me kind of thinks that might have changed. Just changed the scheme, the play calling, the mindset, certainly the flow of the game. But looking at kind of how it all sort of spilled out, Oklahoma ends up with 662 yards of offense. That's 2 games worth of offense. Most of it coming on the ground with 339 yards to Texas's total of 128 yards on the ground. Once you factor in the loss of yardage. Yards per play, Texas is still a bit over at 8.5. The total plays were a big deal too. 81 total offensive plays for the Land Thieves to 61 for Texas. That also gave Oklahoma about 11 minutes more in time of possession. So they had nearly 50% more time of possession. Now, yes, Texas had some quick scores in the first half. In the second half, a lot of short drives, a lot of punts. There was a turnover on downs, and then Xavier Worthy fumbled that kickoff return. So that was a big difference too. And yes, the defense allowed 55 points. They didn't get a lot of help from Worthy's fumble returning the kickoff from an extremely short field. But 48 points is enough to win a game, man. And I fully understand that in the second half, the offense still has to do its job by run blocking, grinding it out on the ground, just like they did against TCU, and kind of put that game away. From at least chewing up the clock. You've got to be able to do that. Bijan was the only running back to get any carries at all. That was a huge surprise to me. 20 carries for Bijan, but he was no carries for Roschon Johnson, no carries for Keelan Robinson. Man, you have to think that it would have been a good idea to at least try something different. Um, especially in the second half when you need to grind out rushing yards. And sure, the offensive line, the line of scrimmage was crumbling for Texas in the second half. That was a massive. To me, that was the big where Texas gave it up in the second half was the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. Oklahoma did a great job of penetrating the offensive line in the second half, and that's kind of what they do. That's their defensive scheme. But I still would have loved to have seen something, dialing up something for Keelan Robinson. He is the type of guy that can pull back some of the momentum. And that is this game, right? We've seen this countless times. This is a momentum rivalry. It's almost super fitting that this stadium is divided up, because that is kind of how the momentum swings, one side to the other. And you could absolutely feel that. You could feel that early in the game with Texas. Oklahoma had no answer for Xavier Worthy. None at all. Josh Moore stepped up and made plays. The deep ball was there. But then in the second half, the momentum was with Oklahoma. And it's just, you can just feel it. You can't quantify it, but it's just riding a wave. And the defense didn't have answers to come up with the stops when they absolutely had to. And the offense couldn't come up with, clock-chewing drives on the ground. The offense had that last series where they threw the 37-yard touchdown pass to Worthy, but Oklahoma got the ball back. And Texas couldn't stop them. So yeah, the defense couldn't stop them. The offense couldn't grind it out. And I think at the end of the day, 48 points is enough to win a game. Oklahoma scored 55. But like I said, there were so many good things to come out of this game, but when you look at the totality of the performance, it doesn't matter. It's still a loss. Yeah, Xavier Worthy was phenomenal, and they had no answer for Worthy. From the first play of the game to that last touchdown, Oklahoma had no answer for Xavier Worthy. Casey Thompson had 5 touchdown passes. He had almost 400 yards passing with a hurt thumb. That's all. Had this been a win, we would be sitting here and talking about one of the greatest quarterback and wide receiver performances in the history of this rivalry. And it still was, but that's not the storyline. That's not what we're talking about. Bijan ripped off that 50-yard touchdown or 50-yard run to the 1-yard line. It was an amazing run. I took a screenshot. I'll throw it up here of he gets around to the 40 and is surrounded by like 4 defenders. And if you freeze that and just say, hey, he takes this another 39 yards down to the 1-yard line, you wouldn't believe it. But it was an amazing run. And really that, Bijan had the bulk of his yards on that carry and like one other. But at the end of the day, 130-something yards on 20 carries. That's the type, Bijan's going to bust out a few. So I think he did his part. Early on, I thought the offensive line obviously was better. There were a couple of plays where Christian Jones just looked like he wasn't even in the stadium. That guy just brain farts some plays away that are unexplainable. But yeah, I mean, it's, another blocked punt, stuff like that. We talked about that. I think a lot going into the game is what to expect. Expect some big plays, non-offensive plays, and the Texas defense did get a couple of turnovers. To their credit early on. Yeah, there were some horrible calls on Oklahoma's scoring drive, their first drive. The receiver absolutely went out of bounds, came back, and caught a first down. He was not pushed out of bounds. Was he touched at some point? Yeah, but he was not forced out of bounds. They clearly missed that call. And I believe that was on a third down, and it would have forced a punt. But that didn't happen. Caleb Williams comes in and rips off a long touchdown run on a 4th and 1 play. Can't happen. Absolutely can't happen. And a lot of Caleb Williams' plays came when it was a busted play, when he was rolling around, out of the pocket. But to his credit, that's the type of player he is. That's also the type of quarterback that Oklahoma's been used to for years. The gamer type of quarterback. Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, even Jalen Hurts was that type. Spencer Rattler isn't really that type of quarterback. He's a great athlete. He's an accurate passer when he's not being frustrated, but he's not. He doesn't have that gamer type of quarterback. And I think Lincoln Riley saw that pretty quick, and he was like, we're not going to be able to pull this off with Rattler. And he made the right decision. Rattler came in and got that 2-point conversion, and there were just countless opportunities for Texas to put this thing away, and they just couldn't do it. Is that a sign of a talented team? Sure. This is it's one of the highest scoring offenses in the country, and I don't think that's going to slow down for the rest of the year. But again, we've seen this time and time before, an inability to just put a game away and stop the other team from staying in the game. Texas is the world champion at letting the other team stay in the game. I even thought that when TCU went on that 99-yard touchdown drive late in the game. Texas went for it on 4th and 1, and Bijan got stuffed. That would have put the game away. TCU goes on a 99-yard touchdown to stay in the game. Texas was able to kind of grind it out eventually, but there still wasn't a knockout punch. There wasn't like this is ball game. This is done. And it's I expect to see that a few more times. For the rest of the season. Jordan Whittington got hurt. He made a few plays, but he's got a broken collarbone. Likely out, I think, at least 6 weeks. He may be out for the rest of the season. And that's your kind of middle of the field threat in the passing game. That's a big loss. Where Josh Moore kind of stepped up for the first time all season Saturday. Worthy, I think, has proven himself to be the number one threat through the air on this team, especially deep passes. I thought Casey's deep passes were the best he had all season. We've been waiting to see that. We've been waiting to see deep passes, hitting receivers in stride, hitting open receivers. His passes to Josh Moore, the first one was a great pass. The second one, Moore was pretty much open. But losing Whittington, I think, is going to hurt Moore and Worthy. Who steps in to replace Whittington? Maybe they move Marcus Washington. Cavante Dixon is there. Kai Money is a slot guy. He's not going to replace Whittington unless they call some different routes or something. But having that middle of the field threat is a big deal. Maybe they figure out some ways to get Jared Wiley involved a little more, Cade Brewer involved a little more, maybe run some different packages. I don't know. So that worries me a little bit. So I hate to see him. God, that he works so hard. He just can't overcome the injuries. And it looked like he was going to be able to this year. So hopefully he gets back in there. There's no reason to think that this thing isn't going to be played again in December. I definitely think it could. It's going to be tough for Texas to go 6-0, to finish out this season. Iowa State is there. Oklahoma State always plays Texas close. Kansas State is not a pushover by any stretch. They've got a running game that can threaten, I think. But yeah, the Oklahoma State game is going to be interesting to see if this thing can bounce back. And that's what I thought. I thought pisses me off so much because I thought that they They bounce back from the Arkansas loss. They ground out a tough win on the road against TCU that has had Texas's number for the past 9 years, and then use that coming in, guns blazing, fantastic start against Oklahoma. We've seen Oklahoma struggle in tight games. They scored 16 points against West Virginia. They had a tough time. They had a close game against Tulane, for crying out loud. They had a tough time against Kansas State, the week before. This just didn't look like an Oklahoma team that had the fire. But you can throw that out of the rivalry game. Obviously, it was there. Obviously, they stepped up to take control of the momentum that Texas had in the first half. But, I just thought that would have signaled that this team was ready to take control of the conference. The ability to score is there. The ability to make some plays, to cause turnovers, to block punts is there. And it was there again. But this team has got to find a way to just snap their neck and put a team away. It has to happen. So will they go 6-0 to finish out the conference? I think they can. I'm going to be surprised if they do, though. I still see a close loss. I think Oklahoma's going to lose at least one Big 12 game. I think we've seen so many surprises this year so far that Texas can't get in a position to where they have to pray for help, right? Iowa State is not as good as they turned out to be. Oklahoma State really hasn't played anybody yet, even though they're ranked number 12, whatever. Spencer Sanders, quarterback, doesn't scare me. He makes some phenomenal plays, and he makes some absolute bonehead plays that cost his team the game. But not going to be easy to go 6-0, but this thing does have to bounce back and realize that this absolutely can and should be played again in the Big 12 championship game in December. So hopefully it's a flip-flop from 2018 where Texas wins and then loses in the Big 12 championship game. And having said that, if this thing does go 6-0 and is 10-2 and heading into a conference championship game, that's better than anybody thought that it would be. But given what we've seen so far, given that I think this offense is about a year or two ahead of where we thought it would be, especially given that there's another new offensive coordinator. Same thing with the defense, another new defensive coordinator. But given the yards and the points that the defense has allowed, that's tough to overcome. And even when the offense sort of gives the cushion for the defense, we saw that they couldn't handle it. I think the defense has done a good job of creating turnovers. I love Overshown. The DBs, man, these DBs have a tough time covering one-on-one. Really tough. Oklahoma's receivers made some ridiculous catches, though. That's the luckiest damn team I've ever seen. I mean, it's just so freaking lucky. And yeah, they got some calls. They had 2 penalties for like 15 or 16 yards, and I don't think they had a penalty called on them until like the fourth quarter. There was no question there were several holding plays by their tackles, especially when Caleb Williams would have to break out of the pocket. There absolutely were holding plays that they missed. There's no question about it. And yeah, those non-calls, those bad calls are much more highlighted in close games for sure. But, that's the suck part about it. There were a lot of great things that happened in this game. A lot of players stepped up to play their ass off, but, still, 7-point loss. Kennedy Brooks just takes the ball and the Wildcat scores. Oh, I'll do it again. I'll score again. Whatever. Drop your comments below. Let me know what you think. What could have been done better? How do you feel about the next 6 games, the second half of the season? Will this game be played again? Let me know. But I appreciate the time. I know everybody's frustrated, but give the video a like, please. I appreciate it. Subscribe, hit the notification bell. If you're listening on the podcast, subscribe there as well. If you're not on the podcast, there's a link in the description, and always check us out at TexasHornsFans.com. Horns always up.